Welcome in to Judd's Hockey Show, the first edition with Declan Goff, the regular season underway. The Wild winning 2-1 against the Ducks on Friday, coming back on
hmm
Saturday, winning 3-2 against the Kings.
Yep.
The old school furious rallies, in my opinion, are now gone. This
Yeah.
team is resilient, and in those first two games have been impressive. But I think what we should do here is, I think it's time, 2 games into an 82 game schedule, overreactions. I think it's time to be, because it's 2 games in. So, like, let's break it down. Let's talk about it, but also being fully aware of the fact that our need to make declarative statements right now within a month could be proven completely wrong. But I'm going to start you with this one after watching 2 games, and it's sort of confirmation of what you have expected to happen. And again, it is, in fairness, what, 6 periods? So it's early. I encourage us to keep that in mind. But my first assessment, and I've got a bunch of them here, but my first assessment of the first 2 games is this one. Kevin Fiala looks like a guy who not only is ticked off, and rightfully so, that instead of receiving a multi-year contract, not what Kaprizov got, but something probably in that neighborhood or ballpark, got a 1 year, $1.5 million deal. Kevin Fiala in the first 2 games looks like he is intent, and this is good news short term, very intent on not just being a flashy player, but in finally bringing fairly consistently, not all the time, but fairly consistently, the elements of what the Wild has wanted to see for quite some time. I love him on the penalty kill.
Yep.
I feel like in the first 2 games that he looked like a more complete player. Now, I don't know, Declan Goff, if this lasts. That becomes the key question. Does he keep this in mind for multiple games and multiple months? But your guy, Kevin Fiala, looks to me like he is trying to fulfill the requirement that the Wild has set, which is we need you to be a more complete player.
Yeah. This is a good sign for him. He obviously spent a good amount of time with Frederick Gaudreau and Victor Rask in the first 2 games. There was a few moments even I noticed that he was out there with Kirill Kaprizov. Not a ton, but there was a couple shifts where he ended up getting there. And yeah, this is exactly the player that I've talked about, the player that I expect him to be. And you can tell that after everything that's transpired this offseason with him not getting that contract, that he's coming in here pissed off. And now, we've seen that from him before, though. We've seen him play with his head on fire. He's just kind of that player overall. But the fact he's being trusted on the penalty kill, and like you said, this could be a volatile situation. It might not last. There might be a situation where he ends up being exposed and in the wrong place, or doesn't pick up his man, and he absolutely could get burned there. But Fiala looks like a man possessed. I think that is a very good first reaction after these first 2 games. And look, the Ducks and Kings aren't going to be anything special. I think the Ducks might end up being the best of those 3. We'll have to wait and see. But even watching both those games this weekend, back to back, Talbot getting both starts. But I thought Kevin Fiala showed up in a big way. He was noticeable. And you know what? Hey, Frederick Gaudreau too. Gaudreau getting power play time, which was I
Yeah.
can't tell if that is going to be a thing all season. I can't tell if that's just Dean Evison throwing that second unit of bone and some guys have to play it. I'll see if that one lasts long. But in general, Kevin Fiala has been impressive in those first 2 games.
I think the thing with Kevin is this. So he's had games for sure, and he's had stretches where he plays where he's clearly ticked off, and so he plays hard. It's actually in those time periods where at times he takes some dumb penalties, and that's one side of Kevin Fiala playing possessed. What I saw in these first 2 games, and especially last night, was a guy who appears dedicated. And now the question becomes, can this continue? But he appears more dedicated to being a complete player, which is exactly what Bill Guerin and Evison want from him. They want him to be a complete player.
Yep.
And he made a play late, I think it was in last night's game, where he decided to try and get fancy in the third period around the Kings blue line, which is not a good idea.
No.
But I've also seen, I think, several examples of where he's being more of a complete player who appears dedicated to what he's supposed to do, which is, yes, of course, score goals and get points. That's his main forte. But also do more, play an aggressive yet not dumb style.
Yep.
And like if he can turn that corner, he's going to get paid. It probably won't be here because
I know.
he's going to eventually, at some point in time, likely price himself out of what the Wild can afford to pay because of their cap situation. But yeah, I don't know if what we're seeing, I don't know if what we've seen in these first two games is the I'm mad or I'm motivated to do
Mm-hmm.
what they're telling me. And if you get that guy, it's fantastic because now you trust him. Let me give you this too about Dean, and I don't know if Billy Billy has a call in this or not. Dean Evason's willingness to play him on the PK, I love. Like, I think that's because there's a lot of coaches who would not do that. They'd say, yeah, he's really good offensively, but I can't trust him.
Yep.
Dean's challenging him, and he seems to be buying in to that challenge. And the thing about a guy like Fiala killing penalties is he can be aggressive and make plays, and he can because he is a power play staple guy. He sees plays coming and can anticipate them defensively and create scoring chances. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to tell you right now, one of my favorite things to watch in this sport, aggressive PK. Like,
Yeah.
I hate when you're laying back and you're like, I'm responsible. I'm just going to be responsible and almost timid. This to me, if you're going to have a PK that is actually going to be aggressive and try and get goals and points, I love that. I mean, I'm not saying be dumb, but I am saying the anticipatory nature of a guy like Fiala can be impressive.
I think too. Dean said in the pregame going into it that they want him on the PK for those exact reasons, that he can springboard plays and he has the ability to change plays like that. To your other points too with Fiala that I noticed in the first two games was, especially I noticed this a lot against the Ducks in the opener on Friday. They were setting up set plays for him. That's interesting because I also feel like even though he's a very talented offensive player,
Yep.
obviously it's no question that Kirill Kaprizov's the most talented player, but Kevin is second, and they were just drawing up plays for him off of faceoffs, which is, I think, number one, incredibly difficult to do. It's really easy to come up with the idea for it, but they were coming up with set plays for him because they know he was hungry that game and they know he's able to score really easily because he just has a hell of a good shot. So I think that's also a good sign that the Wild they're believing in him. They're giving him the tools to try to say, hey, what player do you want to be? Do you want to be a player that can also turn around the second part of your game and become an all-around player? And then, in theory, that would obviously make him a higher paid player. And when we had Greg Wyshynski on from ESPN the other day, I asked him, I said, how are they going to pay him? Because it just doesn't seem like they're going to be able to pay him long term. And Greg brought up a good point that, well, sometimes, and this happens in hockey more than any other sport, is that players will buy into a team and buy into a culture. Now, I think Kevin, at the end of the day, is going to want the team that extends him the most money. Right. But I will say the Wild are in a good position because with the RFA rights, they kind of have a say on where he goes. So another team can offer him an offer sheet, and we've seen that kind of bite some other teams in the past, but I think that actually helps his negotiations.
Yeah, I think the question with him becomes what type of deal does he potentially sign after 2021-22? Because he could say, let's go short term and then hit the market here within the next year after that. I wonder what the reaction is going to be long term from him about not being given a long term contract this time. Like, does he say it actually worked and I played great and I'll stay here, or does he say you didn't trust me, I showed you, I'm gone? Like, that's a good question. I don't know. I tend to agree with what you just said, which is he's going to probably take what he can get elsewhere. But yeah, after this year, it's going to be very intriguing to see what he does because he will be restricted for another season and then be eligible for unrestricted free agency, after 2022-23. So yeah, that's a good question. But if he's going to commit himself to becoming a complete player, watch out. That's great news. What's your take on Goudreau? Because he's looked good, but he has played just before he scored last night, his first goal with the Wild. He has 6 goals in 105 career games with the Preds and the Penguins. And I see a player, again, it's training camp and then 2 games in. I see a player that is definitely probably giving them on the ice what they hoped Bonino would. I mean, Bonino, I think, was a second line, if I'm not mistaken, second line center to start last year, got demoted eventually to the fourth line, eventually got placed on the wing. Great locker room guy, but certainly I don't think he had as much left in the gas tank on the ice as they expected. Gaudreau looks to me to be a better player for sure, but the stats I just gave you, like, he's had chances. He's not really young. So what's your take on how long he could potentially keep this up? And is he a second line guy throughout the course of a season? Or do you think he regresses and becomes a little bit what Nick was, which is by the end of the year, Nick was a very valuable, but he was still a fourth line winger.
Yeah, I think with Gaudreau, he was noticeable in some positive ways on Friday and on Saturday. He looked like he was a player that was complimenting Fiala well. The hard part is his projections are just tough because he's literally, I mean, just a quick math here, he's only played 76 games since 2018. And so it's hard to really project a future for him because he hasn't played that many games. That being said, he's looked pretty solid playing alongside Kevin Fiala and Victor Rask. They're maximizing Fiala and want him to be a responsible player. That line in general is starting in the offensive zone a ton. I know that's a small sample size through 2 games, but they've started in the offensive zone 80% of the time. So that shows that they're actually trusting them to be in the offensive zone more and create more offense. I think it's just, let's wait and see with him because I think with his such small sample size of games played, and even though he has looked good, I mean, I will say he's looked good. He's looked fine. He's looked fine, maybe is probably the better assessment. He's looked fine. Yeah. He's definitely a little more, he has more talent than I thought he would bring.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm curious and also how much time he just spends on that second power play unit because he just doesn't seem like a guy in general that should be anywhere near a power play unit. But, I mean, hey, it's working right now, so you can't really fault him there too much. But so far, he's looked all right. I think he's looked all right.
2 games in, those are 2 things that are positives. I'm going to give you one, and again, overreaction. It's 6 periods of hockey in a year that has 80 regular season games left. My sense is the Erikkson, Zuccarello, Kaprizov line is trying to be too cute.
Okay.
Like they're the top line. They know it. And I feel like they're trying to do too much that goes outside of they're just really damn good. Mm-hmm. It feels like they're pressing for success as opposed to allowing things to come to them, which, by the way, they will. I'm not saying that it looked bad. I am saying that it was intriguing to me that in the game against the Kings on Saturday, that the goal from that line came with Erikkson off after, I think, a penalty kill, and Victor Rask, who scored the goal, playing between Zuccarello and Kaprizov. So my feeling is it's going to be fine. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be really good. But I think that they are pressing to be like, we are the top line, and that has probably hindered them more through 2 games than helped them.
Yeah, I think that they've been okay. That's obviously going to be their number 1 line for sure. And Zuccarello and Kaprizov have had great chemistry dating back to last season. And in general, yeah, I mean, these are our overreactions. So, it's not fun to just say everything's hunky-dory and fine and we can break down the X's and O's of hockey. I would love to see that line get a little bit more run. They didn't spend a ton of time together, but there were moments on Friday and Saturday where both Kaprizov and Fiala were on the ice together. And I'm just curious if they explore that more. That was something I was calling for a lot last season. They explored it in the postseason last year when the Wild were down in the 3rd period against Vegas a decent amount. So I'm curious if those 2 end up playing together a little bit more. They'll obviously play power play together. That's right. Expected. Right. But I'm curious, too, just in general, how Joel Eriksson kind of makes that next jump into an actual first-line role. We'll see how well those 3 gel together.
I'm telling you, I think the key for him will be maintaining the player that he is. So, like, if he can't see himself as, well, now I'm Mr. Skill, right? Like, he can't see his career or his current assignment on that first line through the prism of, well, I got to make Kaprizov look good, Zuccarello look good. He basically needs to play the exact way that he has played for the last year plus now, because he's going to end up being, I think, the guy that does a lot of the work. It's greasy, but that's him. And Zuccarello is such a good passer, and Kaprizov is such a phenomenal talent. He made a pass last night on a goal that was just incredible again. I think that Erikkson has to accept the fact that nobody's asking more from him and that his play, just like he did with Greenway and Foligno, will translate absolutely fine. And when all three get on that page, I think it's going to be a very good line. I just see them, and I'm not surprised. I just see them trying to do too much, and that's in this sport especially. You get in trouble. I think you got to back off, relax, play your role, and you'll be fine. Absolutely great.
Yeah, I think so in general too. Ryan Hartman is now kind of slid into that spot for him on that other checking line. So I'm curious how that goes. I mean, just to piggyback or to jump to a new question here. What did you think though of Talbot getting both nods both nights?
I think that's an indicator of what's to come pre-Olympic break. Okay, because this is a very important discussion.
Okay.
Because the season in March is going to change. You cannot start a goaltender back to back to back to back. I mean, look at that. The Olympic break in February is going to create havoc with schedules in March. But I think what we saw back-to-back starts in the first two games for Cam is very much they're going to ride him. Now the question becomes, how do you walk that fine line so that when you return from the Olympic break, that Capo can start and be effective? He needs to play. It's 2021. You need two goaltenders. You can't just start one. But I'm getting the sneaky suspicion. It's not surprising. I'm getting the sneaky suspicion that if they have the opportunity before March to ride Cam Talbot, they're going to. You?
Yeah, I was a little surprised he got both nods. I also just, he didn't have the best preseason too, and I just don't think they really trust Kaapo Kähkönen long term. It stinks that you don't want to see another. And I know this isn't a perfect example. You don't want to see another Darcy Kemper situation where you give up on a goalie young and then he blossoms somewhere else. And, right. Darcy being a little different, I think he's just more of a mental head case. But I was a little surprised by it. That being said, I thought Talbot did look great in both games. He had, that save at the end on Friday night. The Ducks almost tied the game with 7 seconds left after the Wild took the lead, and he came up huge on a buzzer-beating save. So I thought he was good. Last season he was just average, and that's what the Wild needed, but I don't think the Wild can just get average goaltending this year. They're gonna need above average goaltending if they're really serious about making a run.
And you have to have two. Like you can't have Capo's here, but he plays sparingly. I mean, Kaapo Kähkönen's going to have to play. And again, look at that schedule when they come back after the Olympics in March. Look at that schedule and how it lays out. Like every team that doesn't have two capable goaltenders in that portion of the schedule is going to be in trouble. So if they don't trust him, they better get up to speed on trusting him. That doesn't mean that Talbot is not, and he is right now. He's their clear-cut top goaltender. Yeah. I get that. But this is not 1986 where you said, well, we got Grant Fuhr and then some guy.
And he started like 70-something games with the Oilers when they were, then they had one of their better years like 4 or 5 years ago, and then he got burnt, and then he got burnt out. So yes, I agree. I mean, I really don't think you should be starting a goaltender more than 60 times, more than 55, 60 times a season. You just
and if he gets hurt, Dex, like you gotta have a guy behind him now. You can't do that. But that being said, he started the first two games. My guess is he'll definitely start Tuesday's home opener against the Jets. But then you go back to back again at the X on Saturday and Sunday. Capo's got to get one of those.
Yeah,
games.
He gets one of those.
Like you've got to give him one game, and you can't abandon him and then say, okay, now you're playing, right? Like you got to have confidence,
right? So
next thing, overreactions. Declan, the Wild power play is 1 for 6. Yeah, it's only one for 6. They scored a goal. I believe it was your guy again, Kevin Fiala on Friday night. They were actually 1 for 5 on Friday. They were 0 for 1, a point that bugged the head coach to no end. They were 0 for 1 at one whole power play against the Kings. This is another unit, especially that first one, I think is going to be fine. I'm not concerned. The power play started so bad last year that I actually was like, what's going on? Like this thing looks awful. But when you've got the skill set that this team has and the ability to move the puck, I think the first power play group for sure is going to absolutely be fine.
Yeah, I think the first unit's fine. The second unit does have, I think, concerns. I mean, like I said, if Frederick Gaudreau is playing power play time, I have questions there. But I think in general, yeah,
He's your second center.
That I know he is.
What are you going to do?
I know. And like Victor is Rask. Do you trust Rask to play the second power play? I mean, maybe he wins faceoffs, and if you just plant him in the offensive zone, maybe you don't got to worry.
I like
about
what
it.
they've done to Rask.
Yeah,
Fourth line wing, right?
yeah. I mean,
Or, I'm sorry.
he's the
second line wing.
He's the second line wing with Fiala and
but he's a
Gaudreau.
wing.
Yeah, but he's a
Yep.
wing now. I'm with you. I'm not too worried about the first unit at all.
I think if Rask is used appropriately, I'm fine. It was when you had him. He just can't. He literally. I mean, he's not terrible. But Victor Rask cannot keep up when he is consistently with Kaprizov. Like he just can't keep up. So if he is a second line wing, which by the way, so here's what I like. I got a sneaky suspicion Victor Rask in some ways is the 2021-22 Nick Bonino. Easily see him on the fourth line at some point. Winger.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, that's fine, right? That's fine. It doesn't offend me then.
No.
I was far more concerned about the fact that he was consistently being asked to be the centerman on a line with which he really didn't belong. And yes, I get it. He stepped in, they scored. I'm just convinced that long term, Erikkson is going to be a far better fit for what those two guys do than Rask was. Because one, I think he can keep up.
Yep. Another overreaction from me.
Yes,
my overreaction is I'm not ready yet to apologize for my Marcus Foligno take, which I don't know if you were planning to bring up with me.
He's off to a great start.
He obviously is off to a nice start here. Got in a goal, got an assist. He has 2 points.
Yep.
I texted with another hockey analytics friend of mine over the weekend after the Saturday game, and I asked, I said that there is no way a guy who doesn't score more than 30 points in a season can contain a 55-point season, right?
Sure.
And he said, yeah, for the most part, that's probably the right take. You're correct in that assessment. But also, I mean, if Foligno's not going to get power play time, and I'm not sure if he was on that second unit or not, off the top of my head at least.
Let me
But
check my notes.
if he's not getting top power play time, he's definitely not going to be a 55-point dude. That being said, he's looked great, and he just had, because I got some ats. I got a lot of ats this weekend saying, oh, there's your boy Foligno having a great start. And I know you mentioned the part of, well, I don't really care what his offensive numbers are necessarily, because he brings something to the team that is unquantifiable in a box score. But in general, no, I'm not ready to apologize for the Marcus Foligno take, but I'm happy that he's playing well. I'm obviously not going to be upset that he's he's scoring goals.
Make no mistake, with the new construction of this roster and locker room, Marcus Foligno is now the complete heartbeat, the heart and soul of this team. Like he was largely last year, but now the transformation is complete. He is. So yeah, your reasons why he was going to regress a bit with the statistics and his shooting percentage from 2021, I'm sure are spot on. Like you're probably right. I just don't care. I don't care because he's so important to the fabric of this team. And I just go back to thinking about all the whining and moaning and the, to quote your guy, Bruce, the woe is us guys.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Woe
we
is
didn't
me.
get a like. Yeah. Woe is me. Woe is our whole team. Marcus Foligno doesn't allow that crap. And I love it. And so I don't care. Like if he gets points, awesome. If he doesn't get points, he comes to play. It's a cliche. I understand that. But seriously, watch him, focus on him. He never stops. The motor never stops. And to go back to your question, the second power play is Ryan Hartman, Gaudreau, Foligno, Dumba, and Goligoski. The first power play, Fiala and Spurgeon on the points. Hartman was out there last night. Erikkson, Kaprizov.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you might be right. Statistically, Foligno might be great, or he might not be. But my God, what that guy brings from an intangible standpoint, this is
For
what,
sure.
and this is where the sport's weird because you will get pushback. Oh, well, he's got to do, well, I mean, that's your eye test, Zolgad. I test this, I test that. I've got the stats here. But when you watch that guy in the corners and the workman like crap he does, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those guys are hard to find because he is talented. But more importantly, the motor never stops, which leads me to this.
Okay.
Let me give you an overreaction 2 games in about one of the forward lines. What I consider to be the true third line. Ryan Hartman is a perfect fit. Hartman, Greenway, and Jordan can be up and down. I get that. But you bring Hartman's intangibles, because he's another guy who doesn't stop, and Foligno. I always felt, and I think I'm right, Erikkson Ek is a workman-like player, but he's really good. He's a good player. And I always felt like, he's really talented to be like stuck on that line.
Yeah.
Ryan Hartman is perfect for that line. Like, I love that line. That line, if you think Erikkson Ek bugged guys, Ryan Hartman was in Doughty's face and then scored and then stared him down on Saturday night, Declan.
Right.
Like, that is, again, that goes back to the Wild teams. When's the last time we saw that? Like, when's the last time we saw an in-your-face bleep you? I might not be as good as you, but I just outworked you. When's the last time we saw that from this franchise?
Haven't had it. They have not had that player in maybe ever. I like Ryan Hartman a lot. He was a first round pick with Chicago and probably doesn't hit his ceiling of the player he was supposed to be, but he's carved out a very nice career. I think him filling that role of basically Joel Eriksson Ek from a year ago, and you just swap those two is the right play. Ryan Hartman should be nowhere near Kirill Kaprizov, and you need to figure out if Joel Eriksson Ek is the right player. And that's not a slap to Ryan Hartman. It's just it doesn't make sense. He shouldn't be playing with him, and vice versa. Kaprizov deserves something better, and you need to see if Joel Eriksson Ek is indeed a top line center as well. So I think honestly it's a win-win situation for both sides.
Yep. And Kirill's not playing great yet, and he's still so damn fun to watch. Mm-hmm. Like, he's still making passes, making plays. It's phenomenal to see a player in the Wild sweater who can do what he does, and you're still like, well, that's not that great yet.
No.
He's still he made a pass again last night. I'm telling you, it was like, if 89% of guys who have come through here made that pass, we'd be like, oh my God, what an unbelievable pass. With Kaprizov, you're like, oh man, nice pass. Okay, next play, Kirill. Next expectation, Kirill. I've got a question because I got a full disclosure for you.
Okay.
Friday night. Now, I don't yet get ESPN Plus. I'm got a new cable box that I found out I couldn't hook up yet. I need some help from my Xfinity folks.
Okay.
But I get Hulu, and I thought that I would then get the game. Well, it turns out we don't get Hulu Live, which I think is what you needed to get the game. Yeah. So we've got Hulu. We got a package that Dawn gets, but it didn't have the game. And so I was forced to tune into the game on the good old fashioned my radio. Wow. and monitor Twitter. I don't think I have ever seen a more negative reaction to a telecast / broadcast as I did to that one. How bad, as a guy who watched it, how bad was it?
For Friday's game?
Yeah, with Hextall and Boucher.
It was fine.
Okay, people
I had no issue with it. I thought Hextall did a nice job.
Okay, I didn't hear
it. I loved ESPN Plus. I love this. I think this is great for the game. And then even yesterday, I have figured out new ways to just now watch ESPN Plus with the Wild game, so I can just now watch the opposing broadcast. And even
nice.
On Saturday, I got the Kings. And last year, because the Wild were in the Discover California division, which those putrid teams, Alex Faust, who's one of the best play-by-play guys in the business, he's a young up-and-comer. I mean, he could very well be the voice of the NHL in 5 or 10 years because he's so damn young. Nice. But they did a great job. I thought the Kings broadcast was awesome. And then I know the viral clip went around of Drew Doughty, tongue-in-cheeky, making fun of Kirill Kaprizov for getting a contract, which sets Wild Twitter on fire, which is like, okay, let's have a little bit of awareness. It's Drew Doughty,
too.
And it's Drew Doughty. Like,
he cares about street cred.
If it was some slappy, as you like to say, third line pairing that they were interviewing on the telecast. Like if Brad Hunt. If Brad Hunt said that, I know Brad played with the Wild, but if equivalent Brad Hunt said that about Kirill Kaprizov, tee off on him. That's correct. Drew Doughty's a 2-time Cup winner, an multi-time All-Star, a Norris finalist in his career. And also he's being funny. That's the whole point.
Well, he laughs at his own joke.
I don't. You know my thoughts on the BSN. Me and Patrick Royce and you too have very strong thoughts on the BSN here and locally in Minnesota.
Yep.
And I will do everything in my power to watch the opposing broadcast. And I did not notice anything on Friday that was.
So you didn't mind on Friday?
No, I thought it was fine.
Okay, because Twitter was aflame with gripes about her announcing and play-by-play, and I didn't see it. So in fairness, I'm not passing judgment.
Okay.
I was trying to get yours. The last thing I've got is this. Speaking of the BSN network and BSN North, Ryan Carter.
Yeah.
You have made strides.
Really?
You know what he did last night?
No, tell me.
Pointed out issues. Talked about the first line, the Wild's first line, not looking great. He didn't pick them apart. I wouldn't say he criticized them, but he certainly brought up constructive points about what they weren't doing right at times. And I don't know if Billy G ripped off the Band-Aid and said, hey, if we're not playing well, because Ryan Carter played, he sees things.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's not like he's dumb.
No.
He sees things. But I hope this continues, because he wasn't going off and he wasn't being controversial. But you know how we never got that previously? Like Walls would do it sometimes. So I do give Wes credit, because I think Wes has the credibility to also criticize. But I didn't feel last year that Carter criticized much or broached up, hey, Kaprizov and Zuccarello and Ek aren't playing great. Brought up things last night that I said, yeah, you know what? He's right. That's a great point. So again, I don't know if this is credit to the BSN folks, or if this is credit to just Carter himself, or Guerin saying, hey, if we're not playing great, tell people. But big step last night as far as Ryan Carter's development goes, and I thought that was great.
How much did they, because I didn't watch the local telecast, how much did they talk about the Parisi and Suter and just culture buyouts? Did they bring that up at all?
Yeah,
or they kind of stay away?
Yeah, no, they talked about the open of the show was basically one whole veiled package at those two.
Okay.
And that wasn't LaPanta and Carter, as it was basically the okay, we're about to roll into the season narration of, these guys are gone. And I think it was LaPanta doing it, but it wasn't I think it was taped. But talking about, so basically what they did in the open decks was they talked about at one point the fact that Foligno and Dumba had been named alternate captains or assistant captains. They talked about that, and then they played Foligno standing up and saying, everyone in this room, we care about what you think. It's a great quote. But then they're basically and that's not how, things are changing. So it was one big, not so, I should say, veiled shot at how that room ran, which they're right. I just, 2 years ago thought it might have been appropriate to bring it up then.
Right. Yeah, the Kings broadcast mentioned numerous times about those buyouts, and also crediting Bill Guerin and saying how they want young players to have voices in the room.
Yes.
And I thought that was interesting that an opposing broadcast brought that up. I wasn't sure if the local broadcast brought that up, so I was curious on that. Judd, also quickly before we wrap, we are giving away at Score North five pairs to the Wild Preds game on October 24th, which I believe is next Sunday. And all you have to do to enter is go to the Score North app and click under the Listening Rewards tab. Just hit enter. We'll be drawing that prize on October 21st, so we'll be driving that later this week. But if you want tickets to Wild and Preds, go to the Score North app, Apple or on the Google Play Store. Click Listening Rewards, click enter. No, Judd and I can't win, unfortunately, this time.
Okay.
But if you want tickets to Wild and Preds, go check it out. And also with college students, college nights discounts are back this season. Wild tickets start at just $39. There are a few games to choose from each month. Find out more at wild.com/theme packs.
Very nice. And so if you are trying to do the math in your head, October 21st is Thursday. So enter now.
Yes.
For a Sunday game. I believe it's an early puck drop, right, Dex?
It's a 5 o'clock one.
5 o'clock.
There's no Vikes. There's no Vikes, so you got.
Well, and guess who's back in town?
Yeah.
Granlund, Cunnin. over to Granlund.
Cutting fires goes
It
wide.
used to be Holla, but now he's in Boston.
I'm telling you, man. I know Bedino was an important player to that room. I don't like trading young players. I'm curious if Cunnin. He was pretty much the same player he was
I can tell you
points-wise. I don't like that.
I can tell you right now, Bill Guerin now agrees completely. One reason why this team is out on Eichel for sure is they ain't going to trade their future assets now.
Yeah.
Boldy's not being traded. Rossi, Beckman. I think there's a list of guys now because they've got guys, young players in the minors that are good now.
Yeah.
And I think that they saw, it doesn't take much. If you look at what Fletcher was willing to do, and there are definitely years and times to go hog wild, all in. I agree with that. But if you look at what Fletcher probably did, because he just gave away draft picks, I think there's a feeling that's how your system gets set back, right?
Yep.
So yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that Cunnin, and my only question about him now too is, that room was broken up for a purpose. And we don't know, we have a very loose idea. Because I always thought that Luke was potentially a future captain. Because he was captain of, I think, the U.S. junior team that won the world championship and the Badgers. So Luke, to me, struck me as a guy who definitely could have been, at some point in time here, a future captain. But it's interesting if you look at the parts that were disassembled. It's almost like there was a definite purpose there, too. So before we go, what's our plan for Tuesday? Because as we talked about before, the Wild's going to open against the Winnipeg Jets at the X on Tuesday.
So we will, the Wild play a Tuesday game at home against the Jets, and then Judd and I will have a reaction to that afterwards. We'll be doing plenty of more podcasts and whatnot.
You're the guy with the schedule.
But
I just go where you tell me to go.
Yeah.
Executive producer.
And then game prediction wise, I think the Wild get another win at home. Jets will be good, man. Jets are back.
Connor Hellenbuck in goal probably.
Yeah. He didn't win Vezina last year, right? I believe he was runner up. I can't remember if he was runner up or if he won the award.
No, Flower won it last year.
But
Marc-Andre Fleury won it last year.
But he was a damn good goalie, and you could say was the second best goalie in the league. I need to see it one more time. I don't know. I just need to see it one more time.
I think 2 of the last 3 years he's been really good.
Yeah.
And the Jets, their biggest thing, they finally addressed their defensive core because that's the thing that fell off the bleeping map. Their defensive core used to be great, and then they traded some guys. I think they lost a guy or two to free agency, and the big guy retired on them. So
Bufflin.
Yeah, Dustin Bufflin. So, all right, we are done. We'll talk to you within the next couple of days, though, because this thing is just getting started, and we're going to bring as much of Judd's hockey show to you as humanly possible. Declan?
Pass, shoot, score.